The alarm chimed at 6, but Evan Rivers had already been awake, staring at the dim ceiling of their Beacon Hill townhouse. 10 years ago, this date tasted like champagne. Today it felt like stale coffee. He padded to the kitchen, burned the toast, and arranged it on a plate beside scrambled eggs that cooled too quickly. Lena descended the stairs minutes later, still brushing damp hair. She offered him a distracted smile, then tugged at the sleeve of her blazer. No ring, just bare skin where gold used to shine. Evan's stomach tightened. He replayed anniversaries past. A Paris rooftop proposal reenacted on year 1. A surprise sailboat on year 5, laughter spilling brighter than harbor lights. Now silence pooled between them, broken only by the scrape of forks. He asked about last night's client meeting. She muttered something about deadlines and the Worcester site visit tomorrow. Evan nodded, outwardly calm, inwardly cataloging every detail. The way she kept glancing at her phone, the soft buzz of an unread message. By dusk, after a commute filled with spiraling thoughts, he stood in their bedroom, suitcase half-packed. Enough guessing, he decided. Tonight he would demand the truth, whatever it cost, alone now. The house was quiet, cloaked in the heavy stillness that follows a silent dinner. Evan moved to the kitchen, cleaning up, trying to tame the storm swirling behind his calm eyes. As he reached for a dish towel, he noticed Lena's phone lie on the counter. Screen still lit, no lock. An incoming message blinked to life. "Can't wait to see you tonight, Redheart. Matt." Evan's hands went cold. For a moment, everything slowed. The hum of the fridge, the faint tick of the wall clock, the throb in his temple. His thumb hovered. He tapped the thread. Dozens of texts, playful, intimate, casual betrayals. Meeting spots. Inside jokes. A photo of Lena smiling in the sweater Evan gave her. But he didn't shout. He didn't hurl the phone against the wall. Instead, he took a breath, steady and measured. Screenshots. Sent to his private email. He placed the phone exactly where it had been. Screen down this time. He stood in the dim kitchen, staring at the empty hallway. A memory surfaced. His father smashing plates during arguments, his mother sobbing behind locked doors. No, Evan had promised himself long ago, no rage, no chaos. This time he would choose control. Evan sat at his laptop, the glow of the screen reflecting off his glasses. Matt Chamberlain. A quick search brought him up immediately. LinkedIn, Instagram, even a podcast guest spot. Matt was everything Evan had expected. Tall, polished, with a confident smirk and a portfolio of modern glass buildings. His Instagram told the rest: craft cocktails, Peloton stats, sunset selfies with captions like "build more than structures, build moments." Evan's jaw tightened, but his hands remained steady. He clicked open the Brass Finch Bistro website, their old place, the restaurant where, 10 years ago, he knelt with velvet box and shaking hands. He booked a reservation for 3 days later, 8 p.m., their anniversary week. A private corner table. Intimate. Quiet. Perfect. He turned to Lena, who was lounging on the sofa, absorbed in her laptop. "Thought it'd be nice to go out Thursday night," he said, voice light. "Dinner. Just us. Old place." She looked up and forced a smile. "Sure. That sounds nice." Later, when she showered, Evan picked up his own phone and typed, pretending to be her. "Meet me at Brass Finch at 8. Private corner table." Sent. The trap was set. Not for revenge. Just the truth, served warm. The Brass Finch Bistro glowed with soft amber light, its jazz trio murmuring notes that curled through the air like smoke. Crystal glasses clinked against linen-draped tables, and the scent of seared duck and rosemary filled the room. Lena arrived first, wrapped in a navy coat, her eyes scanning the setup. Candlelight, roses, the exact table where Evan had proposed. A flicker of guilt crossed her face. Evan stood and smiled. "Happy anniversary." She hesitated. "Then Saturday, you remembered everything." He raised his glass. To honesty. They barely touched the wine before a voice interrupted. "Lena?" "Matt," in a tailored blazer and confusion. He stopped short at the table, eyes locking with Evan's. Confusion twisted into dawning horror. Evan leaned back casually. Glad you could join us. Matt blinked. I got a message. I know, Evan replied. The maitre d' appeared and, sensing the tension, simply added a chair. Conversation unfolded like chess. Matt's false charm shaken by uncertainty. Lena's hands trembled slightly as she gripped her napkin. Evan, unnervingly calm, asked about recent projects at the firm, about Boston traffic. But every word had a blade beneath it. The meal had only begun, and so had the reckoning. The entrees arrived, grilled salmon for Lena, steak rare for Evan, something Matt didn't bother to touch. The air hung thick with unspoken words and the low murmur of other diners, oblivious or pretending to be. Evan took one last sip of his wine, its tannic bite sharp against his tongue, then slowly reached for his ring. The gold band slid off with no resistance. He held it between his thumb and forefinger, letting the candlelight flicker across its surface. His voice, when it came, was steady. "This," he said, eyes locked on Matt, "belongs with whoever truly has Lena's heart." He turned to Lena, opened her hand, and placed the ring in her palm. Silence cracked. A nearby diner gasped. A fork clattered onto a plate. Lena's breath caught. Matt looked like he wanted to disappear. Evan stood, calm, composed. No dramatics, just finality. He pulled a card from his wallet and flagged the waiter. "For the bill," he said. "All three of us." No one stopped him. As he walked past the maitre d', past flickering candles and stunned faces, the scent of melting wax and rosemary lingered. He didn't look back. Some exits don't need doors, just enough truth to walk through. Winter hit him like a blade the moment the bistro door swung shut. The Boston air knifed his lungs, forcing a sharp gasp at fog before his face. Evan paused on the sidewalk, listening for hurried heels or a frantic call to his name. Nothing. Only the hush of snowfall and the distant hiss of traffic swallowed his retreating footsteps. Images unfurled against the night sky. Lena walking down a church courtyard aisle, cheeks flushed with June sun, their joined hands trembling at the word forever. The memory pulsed, then cracked. Evan shoved his fists into his coat pockets and followed Beacon Street east. Each breath a white flare. He reached the Longfellow Bridge, iron trusses glowing under sodium lamps. Below, the Charles River rolled black and indifferent. Evan gripped the freezing rail, knuckles whitening, and hurled an imaginary box of keepsakes, tickets, vows, first dance chords, into the water. They splashed only in his mind, yet the echo rang truer than anything spoken over dinner. Wind stung his eyes, but the moisture that slid down his cheek was warmer, his first tear in years. It traced a silent confession across skin gone numb, proof that the dam he'd built around his hurt was finally breaking. Evan let himself into the townhouse just after midnight. Lena's frantic texts exploded across the dark bedroom like strobe lights. "Please answer. I'm sorry. We can fix this." He set the phone face down, silence his only reply. Turning on his laptop, he pulled up their joint savings spreadsheet. Columns of numbers stared back. Mortgage balance, Roth IRA totals, Milo the cat's vet fund. Each cell felt like a chain link, binding them in quiet arithmetic. The old Evan, the appeaser, whispered that 10 years deserved one more chance, that everyone makes mistakes. But the bridge wind still howled in his ears, and the absence of footsteps behind him had spoken louder than vows. He opened a blank email. Subject, next steps. "Lena, tonight changed everything. We need time apart. I'll stay at Caleb's. We'll discuss practicalities once emotions cool." He hit send. No flourish. No closure. In the closet, he chose one suitcase, filling it with essentials. 2 suits, jeans, running shoes, the worn paperback of The Old Man, and the sea that always calmed him. Milo meowed from under the bed. Evan scratched the cat's head, whispered a promise to return, then closed the door behind him softly. Evan dragged his suitcase up 3 flights of Somerville stairs and collapsed onto Caleb's couch, the springs groaning in sympathy. Caleb, best friend, former roommate, keeper of every terrible secret, handed him a cold craft beer can from the fridge. The aluminum hiss cut the awkward quiet. Flashback. Sophomores crouched over a campus map, pricking paper with pushpins for a summer trek across Europe. Collect stories, not regrets, Caleb had declared, and Evan adopted the line as gospel. Tonight the story felt heavier than any backpack. They clinked cans. Foam dripped onto a pizza box while Caleb listened without judgment. Therapy, man, he said finally. A pro helps you sort the rubble before you try to rebuild. Evan shook his head. Therapy screams failure. My dad called shrinks paid eavesdroppers. Caleb leaned back. So rewrite the script. Don't let your old man's ghost decide who you become. Hours slid past in low-lit conversation. They dissected fidelity, whether one betrayal cancels a decade of devotion, masculinity, why anger seems easier than grief, public humiliation, if love can survive when strangers own the narrative. At dawn, pink light bled through blinds. Evan was still awake, but for the first time in days, he didn't feel alone. By the third day, the ripple effects rolled in like high tide. Lena's sister messaged Evan in all caps. How could you ambush her like that? His mother called next, voice frail and confused. What happened, sweetheart? I thought you two were solid. At work, break room conversations stopped when he entered. A few sympathetic glances, but mostly hushed whispers. He overheard someone say, classy way to dump her near the coffee machine. Then the TikTok surfaced. Over 800,000 views and climbing. An onlooker at Brassfinch had filmed the moment Evan placed the ring in Lena's hand. The video, shaky and dim, had captions like, Dude gives wife's ring to her boyfriend flushface ring, hashtag plot twist. Comments exploded. He handled that like a king. Cold, but iconic. Could have done it in private, man. Evan watched the clip once, his own face, too calm to be real. He felt like a character in someone else's drama, fictionalized and devoured. What had begun as an act of quiet dignity was now content, consumed and judged by strangers. The betrayal stung, but the public microscope made it worse. This wasn't just pain anymore. It was a performance he never auditioned for. The studio apartment Caleb found above a bakery in Cambridge was small, windowless, and quiet enough to hear his own breath. Too quiet. At night, insomnia gripped Evan like a vice, thoughts pinging against the walls until dawn. Panic attacks bloomed in his chest, sharp, sudden, and without warning. In desperation, he began journaling. Not full sentences, just flashes. Felt like a ghost in my own home. Is rage safer than sorrow? Why does relief feel like betrayal? One entry haunted him. Who am I without her? That line hung in the air like incense, bitter, lingering, sacred. Some nights, he unpacked a shoebox from storage. Old love letters from Lena, ink-smudged card from anniversaries and birthdays. He reread them slowly, as if decoding a dead language. On the margins, he scribbled questions in pencil. Did she mean this when she wrote it? Was she already drifting when she signed as forever? Each note became a crime scene, every word a clue he had missed. As the entries filled pages, Evan realized he wasn't just mourning her. He was mourning the version of himself that had needed her to feel whole. Caleb wouldn't drop it. One session, he insisted. Just meet her. So Evan found himself in Dr. Hannah Pack's office, sunlit walls, minimalist decor, and a faint scent of eucalyptus. No leather couches, no Freud busts, just a quiet space and a woman with calm eyes and a soft-spoken clarity that cut deeper than shouting ever could. By the third session, the facade cracked. Dr. Pack traced a thread Evan hadn't seen before, a childhood defined by appeasement. When his parents' marriage imploded, Evan had become the peacekeeper, absorbing anger like a sponge, making himself small to keep the household balanced. Conflict felt dangerous, so he avoided it at any cost. They did empty chair dialogues, Evan speaking to an invisible Lena, then to the teenage version of himself. His voice trembled as buried resentment surfaced, not just for her, but for himself. You keep choosing silence over rupture, Dr. Pack said, until the silence becomes a rupture. Through boundary mapping, Evan saw how he let his sense of self blur into Lena's, defining love as sacrifice, until the restaurant scene shattered the illusion. For the first time, he wasn't just unpacking pain. He was beginning to understand its architecture. Evan's breath fogged the window as the train pulled into his childhood hometown, a place he hadn't set foot in for years. He walked alone through crumbling sidewalks to the overgrown baseball field behind his old middle school, the one where his father once promised, "We'll practice curveballs this weekend." The weekend never came. Now, the field was silent. We'd pushed through home plate. The backstop sagged like a tired skeleton. From his pocket, Evan pulled a handful of smooth pebbles he'd collected earlier by the river. One by one, he dropped them gently onto the plate, each one a missed pitch, a broken promise, a boy left waiting with glove in hand. He didn't cry. He didn't rage. He simply stood still, acknowledging that some wounds don't scream. They whisper decade after decade. In that moment, Evan internally forgave the man who failed him, not to absolve, but to release. The resentment, the ache, the echo of someday, he laid it down like the ring in Lena's palm. The symbolism clicked. You can't reclaim your life with clenched fists. Like the ring, like the curveball never thrown, he let it go, and in that release, he moved forward. The subject line read, "I owe you this." Evan nearly deleted it, but curiosity won. Matt's email was unexpected, measured, regretful. He admitted the affair, yes, but also that Lena ended things the night of the dinner. She said she saw herself through your eyes and didn't like what she saw. Matt wrote, more surprisingly, he warned Evan, "That viral video has legs. Someone at the firm recognized me. It could tank Lena's standing. I know I'm the last person who should ask this, but she's not built for public shaming." Instead of rage, Evan felt a strange pull, empathy, so he replied, "One coffee, neutral ground." At a quiet cafe near the river, the two men sat across from each other, neither posturing. Matt looked diminished, humbled. "I never thought about the wreckage," he said. "Only the thrill." Evan sipped his coffee. "Neither did I, until the wreckage swallowed me." They talked, not as rivals, but as men caught in choices that outpaced them. Evan didn't absolve Matt, but he saw him differently now. Not a villain, but a mirror. By the time they parted, Evan didn't feel like he'd forgiven Matt. He felt like he'd released him, and in doing so, release himself. Evan stood in the clerk's office, signature steady as he filed for legal separation, amicable, not annihilating. No courtroom bloodletting, just typed agreements dividing assets and shared memories. Back home, he opened a safe and lifted the velvet box containing the sapphire necklace he had bought for their postponed honeymoon. He photographed it, posted the listing, and watched bids climb until the sale covered a one-way ticket to Spain and 3 months of living cheap. A week later, boots crunching on the stony ascent out of Oviedo, Evan joined the thin line of backpacks heading west along the Camino Primitivo. Sun burned away New England gray, sweat washed anxiety from his pores. Each village brought new companions. Lucia mourning a fiancé, Ahmed rebuilding after bankruptcy, Yara celebrating remission. Around camp stoves they traded loss for laughter, their stories stitching a quilt of resilience that draped over Evan's shoulders at night. He mailed postcards to Caleb and his mother, sketches of Romanesque churches, and notes like, "Still walking, still lighter." By Galicia, the pack hung loose on his hips, 15 pounds gone. Others he discarded internally, guilt, obligation, the need to be needed. Miles became meditation, and identity, at last, became singular again. 1 year to the day, Evan signed the final divorce papers with steady hands and an open heart. No fanfare, no fury, just quiet closure. Later that afternoon, he wandered through a waterfront art fair, live jazz, food trucks, and local artisans selling their wares beneath string lights. That's when he saw her. Lena. She stood by a pottery booth, hair longer, smile softer. No ring, no tension. Just a woman, radiant in a version of herself he'd never met. Their eyes met with no flinch, no recoil, just recognition. They spoke, not as exes, but as two people who had learned. Lena apologized, not for the 100th time, but with clarity and courage. Evan thanked her, not for the betrayal, but for the wake-up call. They shared laughter over how public their private pain became, and a mutual nod. We survived it. Separately, when they parted, it wasn't dramatic, just a quiet goodbye in the salt air. At a silver jewelry stall, Evan bought a small compass pendant, sleek, understated. He slipped it around his neck. No initials, no inscriptions. Just a symbol, forward. As the sun rose behind the harbor, the sky blazed orange. This wasn't the end. It never was. It was the beginning of Evan,